Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Well, welcome to another installment of Ivan Goes Way Down the Rabbit Hole in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. What am I going to talk about today? One of the things that my friends and I were talking about a little bit was the fighter, and we were talking about combat and various things that happen in combat in 5th edition and comparing that to different editions and how it feels different, how some of the maneuvers are different. And we talked about some of the difficulties of making characters and the idea that something like the champion martial archetype is a really easy one when playing a fighter, but something like the Battle Master is a little bit harder because there's a bunch of maneuvers. So I started examining these maneuvers, and where I went with all this was not where I thought I was going to go. It didn't end up with me thinking to myself, my goodness, this is hard, or this would cause analysis paralysis. What I did start to run into was the same thing I ran into years ago when I first got introduced to the game Pathfinder, which was 3.5 D&D, arguably. Or 3.75 if you want to split hairs. And I also found some of the same thing in some of the feats, because there's not a big list of feats in the 5th edition Player's Handbook, but there are some things you can take as feats in lieu of taking your additional 2 points to put in an ability score, or split between 2 ability scores every few levels. You can, instead of doing that, you can take one of these feats or take just 1 point. But anyhow, I digress, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Let's stick to this point. However, one of the things I started to find out was there was a feeling I got looking at this that I got during playing Pathfinder, where there's certain things that the Battle Master archetype is supposed to be able to do. They're part of the moves, or maneuvers, and I'll get to what those maneuvers are in a minute, and some other things about them and how they're similar to some other things that happen in combat. But I started to get that feeling I got a long time ago when I realized there were certain things that people could do in the game. There were rules for them. And in some cases, there was a rule that if you chose to, you could do this thing. And all of a sudden, I realized that if I didn't have that particular ability, I could no longer try to do this thing. And very often, there were things that I would try to do, or we had tried to do or done in combat for years. And also, it's one of those things that as you read 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, part of the conceit of that game, or part of the promise of that game, if you will, is the idea that you will be able to try a lot of things that you normally wouldn't be able to try. That the game was going to allow you. It was going to be a lot more like, say, old school games where there was a lot more rulings involved. That comes up very early. However, as I read it, I find out there's places where that's not exactly true, or where you start to wonder to yourself, did the writers talk to each other? Anyhow, so part of what I did was start to make a document for myself where I saw these things from the Battle Master, also compared them to some of the feats that were relevant. There's a bunch of really good feats in there too that do not interfere with my aesthetic, because a lot of this is bias and preference. And I also compared them to some of the things that were listed in the regular combat section in the Player's Handbook, and also in the Dungeon Master's Workshop, part of the DM's Guide, the combat actions or something like that. I'll get to that. And sometimes these things appear to be a bit at loggerheads with one another, or to contradict each other somewhat. But anyhow, let's go down this rabbit hole. So anyhow. I'd like to make another video sometime more about the action economy, because I talked about that a little bit in the bonus actions videos, but there's a lot more to it. There's some really kind of funny things listed in here. I'm not going to go over help today. I'll save help for another day. And I'll say I talked about using an object a little bit more, but I'll talk about that later. One thing I find out also, this is 14 pages from three or four different sections of the books, and you start to wonder to yourself, why isn't this all together in one spot so it's not so hard to find this stuff and compare it apples to apples? It's one of those things I'm wondering to myself, gee, the book could have been, or books could have been organized better. These things could have showed up together at the same time so you could actually, compare stuff. But anyhow, that's it. I've got the fighting style. I've got to the Battle Master. Thank goodness. So, Battle Master is one of the archetypes you can take as a fighter. You take this at 3rd level. And the main shtick of the Battle Master, there are 16 combat maneuvers that the fighter class has access to, or the Battle Master has access to. At level 3, they can choose 4 of them. They get additional 2 at different levels. So at 3rd level, they have 4 maneuvers, or 3 maneuvers rather. I think it's 4 maneuvers. You've got 5 at level 7. You've got, I'm sorry, 3 maneuvers. 3 maneuvers. You've got 5 at level 7, 7 at level 10, 9 at level 15, 9 at level 18. In the meantime, these maneuvers are fueled by dice. You start out with 4 d8s. And as you gain levels, I think at 7th level, you end up having 5 d8s. At 10th level, you have 5 D10s. 15th level, you have 6 D10s. And at 18th level, you have 6 D12s. So the size of the dice increases, and also the number of the dice increase. And you use these dice to fuel these maneuvers. So you decide, I'm going to do this maneuver, and you roll the die. And depending on how the maneuver works, you get to apply the roll of that die to different effects. If you don't have any dice, you can't do any more maneuvers until like some level, like really high level, where you're able to like get it together. Oh, you have a 15th level. When you roll initiative and have no superior dice remaining, you gain 1 superiority die. So you can kind of like never really on out of the dice at that particular level. Anyhow, let's see. So I got distracted by text for a second. I should have turned that off, but I didn't, so forgive me. So anyhow, after a short or long rest, you get all these dice back. They're pretty much what you use during a combat. You have these dice. You have this many times to do something cool. So I'm taking 5 minutes, almost 6 minutes to tell you we get to this point. So there's various things you can do. You can do something called a commander's strike, which pretty much you forego one of your attacks. If you have several attacks during your action, you can just forego one of them, and instead you use a bonus action. So that's your bonus action for the turn, to direct one of your opponents to strike, or your allies to strike, and they can immediately use a reaction roll to make one weapon attack, adding the superiority die to the attack's damage roll. So I roll my d8, I get a 5. I say, Mike, attack that guy. Mike attacks the guy, and he actually does 5 more damage than normal, because I say, hit him now. There's something called a disarming attack. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, when you him, you can expend one of your superiority dice in an attempt to disarm the target, attempting to force it to drop one of the items that it's holding. And so you add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll, so you do more damage, which is very common with this. Then the target has to make a strength saving throw, and a failed save, it drops the object you choose, and the object lands at its feet. So, I can't really attempt to disarm anybody any other way? Well, no, that's not true, because from the Dungeon Master's Guide to Action Options, there's something called Disarm. And at that point, you can use a weapon attack to knock a weapon from the other, or another item from a target's grasp. So you make an attack roll, contested by the target's strength or dexterity, so that by their athletics or acrobatics. If the attacker wins the contest, well then, it doesn't cause any damage, but they drop the item. And if the opponent wins, well, they hold on to the item, and that's what actually happens. So you get a little bit more bang for your buck being the battle master, but you can still disarm somebody. Okay, great. There's a rule for that. What really makes me smile just a little bit is going way back to what you can do during a round. There's the interacting with objects, things that you can do for free. And one of the things you can do, and this is straight from interacting with objects around you, from earlier in the book. Here are a few examples of the sorts of things you can do in tandem with your movement and action. Pick up a dropped axe. So apparently, if you get disarmed, it doesn't matter all that much, because you can pick it up on your turn. There's something else called a distracting strike. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can take that die and distract the creature, giving your allies an opening. And so you add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll, and the next attack roll against the target by an attacker other than you has advantage if the attack's made before the start of your next turn. Okay, so you're giving somebody else, allowing them to attack at advantage once you've attacked them, because it's a distracting strike. However, in actions in combat under help, part of what it says is, alternatively, instead of helping somebody during a ability check, you can aid a friendly creature in attacking a creature 5 feet from you. You feint, distract the target, or in some other way team up to make your ally's attack more effective. If your ally attacks the target before your next turn, the first attack roll is made with advantage. This seems to just work without a roll. Although you could probably make a case for having some kind of opposed roll, and there is some precedence for opposed rolls in here in terms of some of the other things you try to do during combat, like where it might be a strength athletics roll versus the defender's athletics or dexterity, acrobatics roll. But it doesn't really say that there. So, okay, well, you don't do any damage, but you can simply help somebody. And let's see. Oh, there's another rule here. It's from the optional rules for miniatures. However, it's fairly easy to do this in Theater of the Mind, and I certainly would feel comfortable doing this Theater of the Mind. It's the optional rule flanking. If a creature and at least one of its allies are adjacent to an enemy and on the opposite sides, then they flank the enemy, and each one of them has advantage on melee attack rolls against the enemy. And that's just because they're both there. And that's for free. Anyhow, there's another one called Evasive Footwork. When you move, you expend your superiority die, you roll the die, and you add the number that you roll to your armor class until you stop moving. That's pretty cool. You instantly get great armor class when you do that. There's also a feat called Defensive Duelist. And when you're wielding a finesse weapon, with which you're proficient, another creature hits you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction to add your proficiency bonus to your AC for that attack, potentially causing the attack to miss you. Similar, works different, but okay, there's a feat that kind of does something like that. A little bit different, and you have to have a certain kind of weapon and all that kind of stuff. All right, anyhow. Fainting Attack. All right, this does not mean you pass out. You expend one superiority die, you use your bonus action on your turn to feint. So that means you can attack as well, but you're using your bonus action now. You're feint. You choose one creature within 5 feet of you as the target. You have advantage on your next attack roll against that creature. If that attack hits, then you add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll. So you kind of hold, I guess, that die until next time. You roll it, and then you can use the die afterwards. So you get to kind of create your own advantage. But once again, you can, the flanking and the helping actions kind of do the same thing, although you need somebody else to actually help you. There's a goading attack. When you hit with a creature with a weapon attack, you roll the die, you attempt the target into, or goad the target into attacking just you. You attack this, add the superiority die to the damage roll. See, most of these end up just being extra damage and some kind of effect. And the target makes a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, the target has disadvantage on all attack rolls against targets other than you. There's a lunging attack, and you expend a superiority die to make increase your reach by 5 feet. And if you hit, then you can add that die to your damage. Maneuvering attack. You hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can expend one superiority die to maneuver one of your comrades into a more advantageous position. And you add the superiority die to the damage roll, and you choose a friendly creature who can see and hear you, and they can move up to half their speed with a reaction without provoking opportunity attacks from the target of your attack. Mike, get over here. Whack. Okay, a little odd. Menacing Attack. This is one where we'll see what happens. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you expend your die to frighten the target. You add that to your damage, and the target has to make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, it is frightened of you until the end of your next turn. You know what it doesn't say there? It doesn't say that it gains the frightened condition. You don't find about the frightened condition until the end of the player's handbook. The end, where it talks about frightened. A frightened creature has disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls while the source of its fear isn't within line of sight. It can't willingly move closer to the source of its fear. I don't know why it doesn't say there you don't have the frightened condition. Odd. Okay, parry. When another creature damages you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction to expend one superiority die by the reduce the damage by the number you roll on the die. So it's kind of like, okay, they already damaged you, now I'm going to roll this to kind of make it go away. I parried. Precision attack, you add, let's see, a weapon attack against a creature, you can spend one superiority die to add it to the hit roll. There's a pushing attack. And that was when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you expend this die, you add it to the damage, and if the target is large or smaller, it must make a strength saving throw. On a failed save, you push the target up to 15 feet away with you just by bonking it. Now, back in the actions in combat in the Player's Handbook, shoving a creature. Using the attack action, you can make a special melee attack to shove a creature, either to knock it prone or push it away from you. And you're able to make multiple attacks with the attack action. If you're able to make multiple attacks, this attack replaces one of them. So you don't actually make damage, but you make an athletics check versus their athletics or their acrobatics. And if you win the contest, you either knock the target prone or push it 5 feet away from you. There's already something you can do there, although it doesn't actually cause damage. So now I guess that it's special. But there's also a feat called Charger. When you use your action to dash, you can use a bonus action to make one melee weapon attack at +5, or +5 to the damage roll, or you can shove a creature, and you can shove a creature up to 10 feet away from you. So, which is odd because you have to have this feat to do it. So no matter what I say, if I don't have that feat, I can't run into somebody and push him 10 feet, even if I charge. There's something called Shield Master, which is a feat, and one of the things that the Shield Master can do is I can use my shield not just for protection, but for offense. And if I take the attack action on my turn, I can use the bonus action to try to shove a creature within 5 feet of me with my shield. But I have to have the Shield Master feat. in order to do that. I can never try to bang somebody with my shield to try to move them, because there's a feat for that. And if I took that feat, I can be really mad if the guy next to me can do it. He did it for nothing. Let's see. There's also overrun, shove aside, some other. These are like attack options on how to like see and tumble. Try to get through somebody's space, all that kind of stuff. But let's go back. Rally. You can use a bonus action, expend a superiority die to bolster the resolve of one of your companions. So when you do that, you choose a friendly creature who can see or hear you, and they gain temporary hit points equal to the superiority die roll plus your charisma modifier. And there's riposte. You can, if they miss you, you can use your reaction to expend a superiority die to make a melee weapon attack against the creature as that reaction. If you hit, you add the damage, die to the damage. Sweeping attack. You hit a creature with a melee weapon attack, you'd expend a die to attempt to damage another creature with the same attack. And you choose another creature within 5 feet that you can reach. If the attack roll would hit the second creature, it takes damage equal to the number that you roll in superiority die. So that's pretty much your rolling damage for the other attack. But there isn't damage. There's an action option from the DM guide. Cleaving through creatures. If you reduce an undamaged creature to 0 hit points, any excess damage from that attack might carry over to the creature nearby. And if the original attack roll can hit, you can do some more damage to it. Kind of the same. I mean, it's a little bit different because it's a sweeping attack. A little different, though. And there's a trip attack. You can spend a superiority die to attempt to knock it down, and you do the damage. So here's one of the things that starts to bug me. I know I took a little... is there more? All right. There's not too much more here. On some of these moves, they're pretty cool. On some of these moves, you could say, okay, well, that makes sense that this guy maybe has this ability to do these kind of things, to bolster his companions and that sort of thing, to rally his companions. There are things, though, like in terms of the sweeping attack, in terms of trying to shove somebody, the tripping attack, cleaving through. Cleaving is like an actual thing you're supposed to be able to do. Where I start to wonder to myself, oh gosh, there's no other way, when these things are in here, there's no way for me to say, I really want to try to parry as much as I can. I don't just want to fight defensively. I want to try to absorb all the damage that I can. I can't try to charge into this guy because that's a feat instead. I can't do anything. Fainting attack is something that they can just do. I can't do anything. I can't, for example, I might decide during the game, I want to try to con him. I want to try to use some kind of deception roll. I want to try to use one of those charisma-based skills. And can I make an opposed roll? Can I try to trick him into attacking me at a disadvantage or something like that, or trick him in such a way that I can get advantage on the next roll? I can't maneuver myself in that position. There's there are things here that are special abilities of this class that, or goading somebody into just attacking you. Maybe they get disadvantage on everybody else, but at least can I make him attack me? Can I do those kind of things? Can I try to lunge at him and gain any more reach? Well, no, you can't, because it's a special ability of this particular guy, and he has to actually have taken that. Can I try to scare the guy? Can I try to use my intimidation while I'm attacking the guy? Maybe, okay, instead of attacking him one time, I want to use my weapon, but I want to make an intimidation roll to scare the guy. No, you can't do that because it's a special ability of the Battle Master. Those sorts of things. Well, I think they're interesting maneuvers. I think some of them are really, really cool. Well, I think some of the other feats that are in the book are really cool. They start to grate on me a little bit because it starts to tell me that there's things that everybody else cannot do, and there are things that normally we would try to do. We would try to be creative. We decided, hey, can we do something other than just hit it with my sword? And those kind of moments where, it rubs me the wrong way. It messes with me on an aesthetic level a little bit. And some of those feats, the same thing. And some of the shield feats and the dashing and all that stuff, where they're running into something, whatever it was called. They start to bug me on that aesthetic level, because what they're telling me is you can't do this unless you have that ability, unless you've taken that ability or chosen that subclass and that sort of thing. And it bothers me because it bothers me aesthetically, but it also flies in the face of what they say in the book, in terms of being able to make those kind of rulings. And I know they also say, well, you can throw any rule out you want. Come on. And also, while I'm complaining a little bit, they could have put all this stuff in one spot. I really had to dig in 4 or 5 different sections of these books to put all this stuff together to kind of get an idea of the various parts of combat that interact with each other. And I didn't even cover half of them. I just talked mostly about the things about the Battle Master. There's a whole bunch of other stuff in here that I'd love to talk about, hopefully in subsequent videos. Sorry, this one is a long one again, but it's just one of those things I discovered while reading the text and not just skimming through it. Find out, well, how does this game really work? Take it easy, kids.